Good evening and welcome to Murfreesboro City Board of Education Special Call Board Meeting. Thanks to all that are in attendance. Good evening to the board. Good evening, Dr. Gilbert.
Good evening.
And now we will start out with approval of technology purchase plan. I know that's Mr. Anderson.
That would be right.
Thank you. As we had great news the other night from the City Council, they have approved our technology plan and a means for funding the technology plan. They have asked that we participate in the purchasing of the computers at a percentage share. We're looking at approximately $800,000 per year. City Council has agreed to get the funding in place, and they would put in approximately $500,000 a year. And then they've asked us to put in about $300,000 per year. To make the plan work on our part, we obviously did not have this money put in this year's operating budget, so we're going to have to ask the board to let us utilize our some of our fund balance monies for this year, and then all future years we will build it into our budget. We had purchased the computers for our teachers a few years ago at about, I think it's $134,000 a year that we pay on that, and we will not be having to pay that after this year. So we'll be able to apply that amount of money towards the $300,000. But to get the whole program rolling, we need to have permission to utilize the fund balance dollars from this year. We have adequate funds in it. As you know, we're in our audit right now. The auditors are here, but we anticipate $4.5 to $5 million of general purpose dollars in our fund balance by the end of the fiscal year. So we'll be looking to fall back on those reserves. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those about the funding.
Ms. Phillips?
Minor comments. First off, thank you, Mr. Anderson, Dr. Gilbert, and staff. And a big thank you to Mr. Washington for representing us to the City Council and to the City Council for helping us fund this program. I would appreciate it, Dr. Gilbert, just for the sake of the folks at home, you would review for them why we have this need for this large expenditure for technology. And then I just want to say, I understand, I don't like our fund balance to dip as low as we would have to have it dip for to fund this, but I understand that this is a one-time thing. And you all may remember, not to be tooting my own horn, but for over a year I've been talking about how we need to fund technology separately from our fund balance and have an ongoing, because we knew this was coming. We knew this was coming, and it was something that from now on we can be more proactive perhaps in our budgeting for technology. But if you don't mind reviewing for the public.
We began looking at technology about 2.5 years ago because we realized that our youngest computers were purchased in 2007. So we knew that we needed technology. But about that same time is when the state moved to the Common Core Park partnership, which has an online component of assessment. So we knew that was coming down the pike. At that point in time, we stopped really planning to a point because we wanted to make sure that whatever we purchased would be able to assess our students. And at that time, we had no direction from the state. We really didn't get a clear direction from the state until this last year. And during that time, obviously, we checked with different school systems in Tennessee, North Carolina, and Alabama. This past year, we've gone to, I think, all the trainings the state has had as far as the rollout, what it would look like, what the devices needed to be, what their capacity needed to be, what our infrastructure needed to be. And so finally reached the conclusion that really our best purchase would be to go for the Dells, which we have on state contract. So we're looking at really a twofold purpose. One is certainly the park assessment, which is coming, and I want to say a little more about that in a second. But also the fact that we need technology if our students are going to be prepared for the workforce. If we think about how much we use technology on a daily basis, it's foolish for us not to be preparing our children early. So that's the reason that we made the request that we made. We feel like that the Dells will certainly give us the power that we need for any assessment and what that looks like, and we're just beginning to see what that assessment looks like. We also feel that with having the iPads in the pre-K a few, and then in the kindergarten and first grade, that will give our students the ability to get used to digital devices and for them to be prepared for second grade, which is really when we want them to work with the laptops that they will be tested on starting in third grade. The timing of this is really more critical than what we thought it would be, because we are going to be taking our third through sixth grade writing tests in February online, and then received word, I guess, a week or so ago that we would have several of our schools that are going to participate in the pilot. Now, I need for the public to understand that is not necessarily a choice of ours. When we have the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is the NAEP test, we are told which schools will participate, and with this pilot, we are told which schools will participate. But we will be having several of our schools that will be taking an online test in February and then again in May. So I think it's really terrific that the technology plan is rolling out as it is in the time that it is, because we want our children ready for February.
So what you're saying for the folks is that the state is mandating that our children be tested digitally.
Right.
And so we need to be able to comply with that. And
Right.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments for Mr. Anderson? Mr. Barrett?
So I read in here that it's going to be a variable rate loan. So if that goes up, we got in trouble, not we did, but 2008, we came out with variable rates and loans and things like that. So if that goes up, are we going to be still paying $300,000 or?
Well, the city, when it was presented to the city council, Jim Crumley had said that the rate is so low right now, it's their advisors have advised that they go with a variable rate, and they could convert it over to a fixed rate if it ever got to the point where they saw it was going up too much. I am going under the premise that we're going to budget $300,000 a year, because when you look at 300 and 500, it doesn't quite exactly equal the total amount we have. So I was assuming they were rounding off, but we're putting in our budget document $300,000.
Okay. And then, so going forward, we're going to have to do this for the life of the computers is 5 years. Is that what we're anticipating? So going forward, we're going to have to budget this out for the next 5 years, and we're going to add it in.
Yes, sir. When we put together our budget every year, we're going to build into our budget this amount of money as we move forward. Obviously, the city council, by establishing this fund, is committing to the $500,000 a year, because they're going to borrow the money on that amount.
Okay.
All righty. If there are no other questions or comments, certainly we're appreciative of Mr. Anderson and Dr. Gilbert and everybody that's been involved. We will entertain a motion for the approval of this technology purchase plan.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Are there any that oppose? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
Ms. Baker.
Okay, good evening. The first policy you have before you tonight for second reading is the Energy and Management and Conservation Policy, and I'll let Mr. Anderson discuss this policy.
As we've discussed previously, this is just a slight change in it by recognizing the ASHRAE standards to be put in our policy, and to make sure that school districts statewide don't go and put the emphasis so much on the energy efficiency that they forget the learning environment. So this is just recommended language from the state Energy Efficiency Schools Initiative, and that's the only changes we're asking for.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Are there any that oppose? Thank you.
I have a question for Ms. Baker.
Okay, Ms. Campbell.
Ms. Baker, these policies we're looking at on second reading, is it advisable or unadvisable to make a motion to accept them all as are on second reading? Or do we need to go over each one of them?
This is your chance to go over each one of them. They'll be brought, you're voting tonight to bring them to you at the regular meeting for second reading. If there are any that you feel you want to discuss, we can pull them out and discuss them
Okay.
in more detail, or you can make a motion to approve them all. I know we've discussed them at least, this may be our fourth time, so I know we've discussed them before. How would y'all like to proceed?
Well, I have one I want to discuss. I know I
Okay,
wanna-
then I'll just go policy by policy.
please.
Okay, the next policy is Relations with Education Research and Service Centers, Board Policy IS-17. There have been 2 additions, items 6 and 8, to the guidelines to be used in involving research with students, teachers, and other employees. Guideline 6 is the value of the project for individual schools is to be considered, and Guideline 8 is that the research project must comply with the relevant portions of the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And those are the only changes to this policy.
Are there any questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any that oppose? Thank you.
Okay, the next policy that you have before you tonight to bring on second reading at the next meeting is Board Policy STU 25, Suspension, Expulsion, and Remand. The addition to this policy is in line 30, Clause 8. It includes assaulting a school bus driver or other school personnel with vulgar, obscene, or threatening language as one of the basis for suspending someone. Previously, the policy only covered such an offense against a principal or a teacher, and it's been broadened to encompass basically all school employees.
If there are no questions, we'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, and the last policy you have before you tonight to bring on second reading is, I believe it's the last one, Board Policy BO 48, Section 504, Complaint and Grievance Procedures. This, as we've discussed before, is a policy that is required by federal law, and there is a consent order out handed down by the Federal Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, requiring all Tennessee school districts to adopt a procedure for 504 grievances. And this is the procedure that they recommend be adopted.
Mrs. Phillips and Mrs. Rainier?
I had a couple of questions that I wasn't clear on. Maybe you can help me clear
Okay.
it up. First off, is this policy referencing a teacher's complaint about something that may have happened in her school, discrimination by a principal? I mean, what kind of?
No, this policy encompasses mostly student complaints.
Okay, these are student
It would be, it's a situation where think of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay.
Everyone is very familiar with the Americans with Disability Act. Section 504 is the education world's version of the Americans with Disabilities Act. It basically says that people with a disability should be able to ask for a reasonable accommodation so they can access the educational system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the Section 504 law is there for.
Okay.
So if we had a student that had some sort of medical condition, a disability under this law, that needed some sort of accommodation so they could access education, then we would need to provide a reasonable accommodation. And what the process is that you sit down with the parent and you talk back and forth to reach an agreement of what's reasonable, what will accomplish the needs of the child, and also be reasonable for the district and won't create a hardship.
Okay.
So that's what this is designed to cover. And the law requires that there is a complaint procedure and a grievance procedure in place if the parents disagree with the outcome of that conversation.
I see.
And that's what this is for.
I see. Now, would this be only directed toward those very clear discriminatory things for, some kind of accommodation for, entrance and egress, or could this have to do more with less tangible forms of discrimination?
Yes, it could cover situations. I think one of the one disability that under 504 laws, it may or may not reach the level of being considered a disability. For example, a severe allergy. Depending on how that severe allergy impacts the individual's ability to access a public education, that may qualify as a disability under Section 504, and they may we may be required to provide a reasonable accommodation to allow them to access the education. For example, if there's a severe peanut allergy and the individual can't come to school or participate in a public education if there are peanut products in the classroom, we, as a reasonable accommodation, we may enter a 504 plan regarding that. The more obvious ones may be people that have the use of wheelchairs, that we obviously would have to accommodate that use. They may have a special equipment for hearing issues. There's such a wide range. It's very individualized. That's why you have to sit down with the particular person and have that back and forth conversation of what's going to work best, what's going to allow them to access a public education.
Well, that really clarifies it for me. Thank you, Ms. Baker.
Ms. Renier?
That's kind of the lines that I was not quite sure if this was student or could it also be an employee?
Employees typically fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act,
So
and we
would-
have
yeah, it would
another
be a
policy
504.
on the books that covers the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay. And when you talked about something, obviously we know the obvious things, wheelchair, whatever, hearing aid, whatever, but something as simple and or severe, because it certainly isn't simple, as severe as a peanut allergy, who makes that determination that it falls under 504?
There have been guidances issued by the United States Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights that set forth a definition of a disability, and you look first to those guidances to see whether it qualifies under that definition. There's a distinction in the law between a disability that meets that criteria for ADA or Section 504 versus, say, a severe medical condition. There's very specific definitions that you have to look to those guidances set out by the federal government to determine whether it even qualifies as a disability under this law, and then you move forward from there and start working from there.
Okay. And also, in the timing of this, I guess just for public knowledge, if in the event that an accord could not be reached in the first phases of this, and we go to step 1, step 2, this could be a total of 55 days. I was just counting up the days. Also, it talks about the grievance would go to the 504 coordinator. Who is that?
Ms. Deborah Savely
It is
acts as our 504 coordinator.
Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to clear it. Thank you so much.
I just had 2 last questions, if I may. You know, one thing that confuses me about it is the wording, for example, in line 1, where it says that the district acknowledges that it is desirable to resolve employee allegations when we're talking about children. The employee allegations phrase makes me think we're not talking about children.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what threw me.
I'll clarify that to reference student.
And then the same thing is on line 29 when it defines grievance, and it talks about any claim by an employee that there has been a violation. And so this is what's, been confusing me about that.
Okay. Okay, I'll make that clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments for Ms. Baker on BO for Mrs. Renier?
I just have a question then. This was our second reading on this policy, correct? Do we need to approve this with the changes to go ahead? The second reading?
This is being brought to you for final for your final reading at the regular board meeting. So I'll have those changes for that board meeting.
So I can make a motion to approve this with the changes that you're making in line 1 and 29.
Yes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, we're done with the board policy review. Now we'll take the time, if you've had a chance to look at your draft agenda for our September 24th meeting. If there are no questions or additions, are there any, Ms. Phillips?
I'm just looking forward to our annual Reading in the Schools Day held on September 20th. I know you all will probably be there too, and it's going to be a great time.
Fun day.
Since there are no comments, Mr. Campbell?
I got a question.
All right.
Okay. More than likely, 9 times out of 10, I won't be here next Tuesday because of this surgery tomorrow.
Okay.
I thought about asking maybe to move the election of the board chair and vice chair to sometime in October, but that may interfere with the TSBA situation.
Now, Ms. Ridley, I think our meeting would have concluded.
The meeting will take place on Tuesday of that week, and that training is on Friday of that week, so I could call and reserve a spot and then turn the name in, I think it.
Would you like to make a motion to have it moved to our October meeting? Or what did you want?
To our regular meeting or our work session?
To the special call.
That'll be October what? 14th. Yeah, if possible. Surely I'll be done to be out by then.
Well, if you see where you're not, we can call you.
Well, Mr. Anderson and I talked today about doing a little Skype work, maybe.
We hadn't got there yet. Ms. Baker, you had a comment?
It's October 15th. I'm sorry.
Okay, October the 15th. All right, Mr. Campbell, you want to put that in the form of a motion? And
Yes,
see if we can
ma'am.
Get a second?
Move the election of board chair and vice chair to the October 15th meeting instead of the meeting on September 24th.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Hearing none. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then, Ms. Ridley, if you'll remove that for us. If there's nothing else,
I have something.
oh, Mr. Washington?
Yesterday, there was a real good press conference about the True Blue Initiative with MTSU, and our total community it's an initiative that the total community involved, I mean, all of Rutherford County. And you have a person named Greg Lyles that's on that particular committee, and I'd like for him, if you don't mind, for him to come up and tell the public about his involvement and what that initiative is all about.
Thank you. From memory, I'll try to do this. I had the privilege of serving on this committee, appointed by President McPhee, chaired by Pastor James McCarroll of First Baptist Church. It was a representative committee from across our community. Also, one of our other employees, Ms. Maricela Tapia, served on this committee. The goal was to get a cross-section, as I said, from the community. Basically, our charge was to come up with a set of initiatives that would be rolled out to the community that would try to make a greater bond, greater connection between MTSU and the community. MTSU is wanting to be more visible in the community, and MTSU is wanting the community to be more part of its activities on an ongoing basis. And I must say that Murfreesboro City Schools has always enjoyed a very strong partnership with Middle Tennessee State University because of our director and her leadership. So we feel like the Murfreesboro City Schools and MTSU already have a strong partnership, but we want to extend that to the community as a whole. On October 4th, I believe, which is the Friday before homecoming, there's going to be a big push for the community to be painted blue. That's really the first of many initiatives that are coming down the pike. Another one would be the development of a, I lost the term. App, thank you.
You're welcome.
The development of an app where the community can, at any point in time, look at what's going on at the university. And the emphasis also was made not just to be a focus on sports and the athletic activities, but the university as a whole. So that's coming down the pike, along with some other initiatives that I just off the top of my head. That's one that really stands out. But you will be hearing more about the October 4th Paint the Town Blue initiative. So when you go to Knoxville, you see orange, of course. So when people come to Middle Tennessee, we want them to see blue. Regardless of your allegiance to other universities, you're in Murfreesboro. Middle Tennessee is a part of this community, and we want the community to be a part of Middle Tennessee. Thank you. Any questions?
Ms. Phillips?
I just wanted to thank you for representing us so well on that committee. I'm a MTSU graduate.
Yeah.
My son's there as a freshman in aerospace.
Great.
And Dr. McPhee's welcome to come back on the Murph Show. Wearing blue, of course.
He might, or someone from that committee, maybe Pastor McCarroll. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
Really, really appreciate Greg attending that meeting. He told me about the meeting. It was excellent, and I heard Pastor McCarroll today talk about that, so it's an exciting time. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Rob Lyons, the council, Jim Crumley, and Chris Lilly for their work with the technology plan. I think it's an exciting time. It'll be a challenge to get it rolled out, but we'll get it rolled out. But I think what it'll do for our boys and girls will really be phenomenal. So we're very excited about that. Very grateful that we have a city council that understands the importance of education to the future.
Well, if there's nothing else, and
One
thank
more
you.
thing.
One more.
Don't you have a good day coming up on Friday?
I think I'll be 25, not
That's what
30.
I'm doing. Happy 25th
I do.
birthday on
Thank
Friday.
Thank you. Happy 25.
I saw that on a banner behind an airplane today.
So happy 25.
Yeah.
Wish. Thank you so much, Mr. Campbell, for wishing me that, and we do wish you well through your surgery, Mr. Barrett.
I got some news.
You need to tell your news.
My wife and I are adding 2 future members to MCS schools. So 2 little girls.
That's exciting.
March.
That's great.
So
All at one time.
all in one. No, I hope. I'm sure my wife won't appreciate that.
We'll take any additions we can get to Murfreesboro City, and you've already started us on a good foot.
That's right.
We're bringing 2 to us, twin girls. We're excited for you, Mr. Barrett.
Thanks.
If there's nothing else that entertains this board, we will ask for an adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Oh. Is there a second?
Second.
We're adjourned.
We're done.